All right, so let's put ourselves in this position. You wake up one day and you feel like you are living through the end times. The world seems to have gone off its meds. Everybody's panicking. We're hoarding toilet paper. And everywhere you look, you just can't get away from that one news story that is causing just so much anxiety on multiple levels on everybody it touches. So naturally, you try to escape from this. You try to make sense of it in the best way that you can. And for a lot of us, we reach for some branch of entertainment. Some people listen to music, some rewatch old TV shows, and some reach for the movies, especially when the very nature of this particular world-ending event means that people are trying to stay in their homes. So the question is, you go to watch a movie during these difficult times, what do you reach for? What's that film that you're going to watch? Well, it depends greatly on taste. But as I scroll through social media, I see a lot of friends of mine watching things like Outbreak, Contagion, The Omega Man. And, you know, if that's what gets you through, kind of, you know, maybe it could be worse kind of scenario, then more power to you. But for me, I wanted to go, when I was looking for something last night to try to make sense of what's going on and try to calm my own inner turmoil, I reached for something a little bit more life-affirming, at least in my opinion. And the film I reached for, Bouncy Bouncy Speed Bumps, that was not the film I reached for. The film I reached for was 1993's Matinee, starring John Goodman. A long-time favorite of mine. I wouldn't say one of my top films, but a film I really enjoy and really get a big kick out of for a multitude of reasons. So, what you got to understand is, in 93, Roseanne was a big hit. It was one of the biggest shows on television. And like a lot of stars before and after, when a show becomes a big hit, the stars of that show naturally want to try to parlay that newfound fame into a broader career. You know, we all remember the international horror that was Katherine Heigl's film career. And they're still trying to convince us that Jennifer Aniston is a thing. This was well before John Goodman was one of the most underrated and underappreciated actors working in Hollywood. There was a stretch there in the early to mid 2000s where if John Goodman appeared in your movie, it was going to win Best Picture. And it seems only fitting that since the very first Drive Home review I did was of a John Goodman film, that the very first Drive Home review, Forgotten Gems review I do is of a John Goodman film. At the time, John Goodman was just that guy from Roseanne. But he was trying to parlay that name recognition into a film career. It didn't go too well for him there in the early stages. He had a film called King Ralph, where, you know, basically what if Dan Connor became the King of England is basically the premise of that. And he did this movie. In this film, he plays Lawrence Woolley, who is a knockoff of famed B-movie director, I believe Frank Castle was the guy's name, not The Punisher. It's something Castle. I should have researched that before I did this. But a purveyor of B-movie films, B-movie horror films, the kind of stuff you'd see pop up on Mystery Science Theater 3000. Kind of a low-grade Hitchcock, because the subtlety of Hitchcock wasn't there, and he also had all these weird gimmicks. One of the ones who did, you know, if you die during the viewing of this movie, the makers will pay for your funeral, you know, that kind of, you know, these kind of gimmicks to kind of get the crowd pumped up. So John Goodman plays basically this guy who is premiering his new film, Mant, about a half man, half ant merged together by radiation in a small town in Key West. This is at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So the world is already on edge, and in comes this horror movie with all of these kind of gimmicks and special effects to kind of get the audience a little extra jolt. This film is unbelievably charming, at least to me, for a number of reasons. First of all, I love those old movies. I love those old horror movies, like, dearly and deeply, ingrained into my DNA. Mystery Science Theater 3000 is my favorite show of all time. And I've seen so many of these on there. And yeah, they're ribbing it and they're mocking it, but it's with a love. It's a roast, not an attack, But even before Mystery Science Theater, I love all things that are campy and stupid and weird, and yet the people involved are taking 100% seriously. I love Power Rangers, I love old serials, I love classic Godzilla movies, and I love these old horror movies from the 60s and 50s. And this film is a love letter to those films. The film within a film, when they actually show Mant, when the people go and see it at the climax of the movie, it is such a perfect send-up of that type of movie. The style of acting, the camera shots that they use, the stock characters that they have. They have this one doctor in the movie within a movie who comes in, and he is the perfect old movie doctor. Well, you see, Helen, because they always have to explain it to the woman in those movies. They always have a woman in those movies. Sometimes she's a doctor herself, but the man doctor supposed to mansplain everything to her. And this old doctor said, well, you see, Helen, he's growing at an accelerated or faster pace. You're seeing it at a magnified or enlarged view. Just little things like that. The pseudoscience they use in it. That the guy turned into an ant, excuse me, because an ant bit him while he was getting his teeth x-rayed. So, of course, there was a form of radiation, so the ant saliva traveled to his brain as he was getting his teeth x-rayed, and that's what caused the metamorphosis. It's, like I say, it is such... I would love it if they had just made that movie. I want to see a movie like that. I'd pay twice to see that movie. It's such a wonderful, loving send-up. Not a parody, not a mean-spirited kind of thing, but just a perfect send-up. That's only part of the reason this movie is so good. The other part is that while it has that goofiness and it has that that campy old school horror feel to it, it's also very earnest in the emotions of the characters and the people of that time, and especially in that place. Not only is the Cuban Missile Crisis, just one of the tensest times in history, but for the people in Florida, like the closest target, I mean, that must have been, like it is now. So this movie not only kind of revels in the goofiness and the fun of those old monster movies, but it also takes a close look at the environment that those movies were coming out in. I said it during the Invisible Man review. Horror movies are a reflection of what we are afraid of at the time. What is scaring us personally, socially. A good horror movie taps into that and cranks it up. And this film really does take a look at, in a very earnest way, it's not looking at it in a, weren't these people silly? Weren't they stupid for being afraid of this? It really takes a sensitive view on the whole topic. Why these films registered when they did. Why they had the effect that they did, even though, yeah, they're stupid and campy. So, of course, John Goodman is our lead. He's the name above the credits. And I don't know what you can say about John Goodman that hasn't already been said. He's awesome. He is an awesome actor. He has amazing screen presence. Just bigger than life. And he is just so good in this role. Con man, huckster, father figure. He does all these things so seamlessly, making a multi-layered character. But he's not really the focus of the movie. This was a big thing in the 80s and into the 90s, is that you'd have a big star, kind of like they did with Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. You have a big star who is your name above the credits. But the movie doesn't really focus on them or their journey. They're there to kind of just come in, do some funny stuff, and then move on and rely on the other characters to move the plot. The plot is actually about a couple kids, teenagers, early teens, living in this time, in this place, at this moment in history. The movie is actually seen from the point of view of Gene, who's played by Simon Fenton, who didn't go on to do a whole lot after this. He did a couple more movies, but not a very well-known young actor. Not the best actor, for being honest, but not bad. You're asking him to carry an entire movie of comedy and emotional pathos, and I think he does it fairly well. But we see the film and the world of the film through his eyes. He's a young man whose father is in the Army, and they've moved to this naval base, Army base at Key West, and his father is deployed for the blockade, for the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it's through his point of view that we're seeing the events of the film unfold. And I think that's a really smart way to go with it, is that, because that's something I see a lot of people posting on social media and whatnot now, is, think of how your kids are going to remember this. What is their point of view going to be? And I think this film, because I've seen it in the high school I teach at, this film captures what I'm sure a lot of kids' reactions to that event must have been like. Some of them terrified, some of them just throwing their chest out, a lot of bravado. We're going to go and we're going to blow Ivan up. We're not going to worry about it. The others just worried about their libido. Hey, you think if the bomb's about to drop, you think she'd do it with me? I think it's a very real look at how, and yet when they do a drill, the duck and cover drill, you can see in them, no matter what their opinion is, and just the way the camera moves, you can see that no matter what their opinion, no matter how much bravado they have, they're scared shitless. And they may be laughing at certain parts of it. They may be laughing at, the crisis, but they're really as terrified as anybody else, probably more terrified because they feel they have absolutely no control over the comings and goings. They're just trying to navigate high school. So a lot of the emotional thrust of this film is on the young actors. Simon Fenton, Lisa Jacobs, who plays his kind of love interest. She's a girl raised by more liberal parents. She calls her parents by their first names. They go and see Mant because of the, it's a freedom of speech issue and all that. Again, not one who's had a longer career, but I didn't know she was one of Randy Quaid's kids in Independence Day. That's kind of her big claim to fame. But her, Kelly Martin, everybody knows Kelly Martin. If anybody, if you know, at the time, if this film had star power, was John Goodman, then kind of lower down was Kelly Martin. Everybody knows Kelly Martin as the one with the voice. Kelly Martin, a very good actor. I like Kelly Martin a lot. I've never seen her in a film or a TV show. I was like, oh fuck, what is that? But she just has a very distinct voice. It's not quite little girlish, but it's not quite adult. You know, it's a very distinct look and voice. So she plays kind of your average, for the time, you know, teeny bopper. You know, and she's very charming in this. You know, just, she always has a lot of charm, does Kelly Martin. But it's through these kids that we're getting the emotional thrust of the film. We're getting our view of the world, and it's a good way to go. And Jean, our main character, is a horror movie buff. You know, so someone who gets off on, you know, fake horror is now living through a real life, something that's really scary. And again, I stated this before, but I want to state it again. I think what this film does, and I think what a lot of modern comedies don't understand. People ask me, oh, why don't you like modern comedies? Oh, you're a prude. Oh, you're this, you're that. A lot of modern comedies don't understand the concept of balancing the comedy with real emotional thrust from characters you can understand and relate to. You know, having a dickweed character played by Adam Sandler or Will Ferrell suddenly realize, oh my God, I shouldn't be such a dickweed, or being rewarded for being a dickweed, does not emotional connection make, at least not in my opinion. But these films knew how to have that thrust. And these kids carried, none of them are kids now, obviously, but these kids, as they appear in the film, pull this off really well. It's got a great supporting cast as well. Kathy Moriarty, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, the last name, is in this. So Kathy Moriarty was a big stock character actor from around this time. She was in a lot of things. She's a taller woman, a little bit, I don't want to say fat, she's not fat, she's a little thicker than most of the ingenues. She has got a much deeper, raspier, almost mannish voice. You know, so she's always playing the villain or the bitch character. And in this, she's playing John Goodman's girlfriend, who he also puts in all of his movies, and she's just like so fed up with the whole thing. And again, a great kind of performance, a dual performance, because she plays herself, you know, her main character, and the kind of snarky, you know, bitchy kind of thing. But then she's also the female lead in Mant. So it's this real dual performance of, oh, shut up, Lawrence, to, oh, doctor, whatever are we going to do? You know, and it's so well done. Robert Picardo, oh my God, I love Robert Picardo. So Robert Picardo, who I did not know this, but I looked when kind of getting the cast list and everything for this review, I'm going to try to do these a little bit more researched than the drive home ones. Robert Picardo, 228 credits to his career. Holy shit. That is just amazing to me. Not amazing to me, really, because he's a great actor. He's a great character actor. I know him best, and probably most of my fellow Trekkies know him best as the holographic doctor from Star Trek. But of course, he had a long career before this, China Beach, The Wonder Years. You know, he's been a steady hand and a great character actor for decades. And he is in this playing the theater manager who is uber paranoid about the bomb falling. He's got the little radio in his pocket that is constantly tuned to the emergency station, so he's always hearing those. It's the modern day equivalent of the people sitting in front of the TV or the phone reading every fucking thing on whatever. And he is just hysterical as this fussy, kind of uptight guy who just, when he thinks the bomb is falling, goes just completely ape shit. He's great. He's always great. So a wonderful supporting cast. Is this movie perfect? No, it isn't. It falls prey to, again, something that was kind of standard in the 90s, is it has to get a little too overly complicated in some areas. So Kelly Martin has a greaser boyfriend, or an ex-boyfriend that went to juvie, who is out and kind of stalking her and her new boyfriend, and he tells the boyfriend don't go near her, and he doesn't, so she thinks he broke up with her, and then they see each other at the movies. It's a very complicated, not really necessary thing to feel like you have to have an action heavy finale, and I don't think it's needed, really. Honestly, that is kind of the only part of this. Oh, you have to have, of course, again, going with that thing that these films felt like they had to have a big action-heavy finale. During the showing of Mant, the balcony is collapsing because there's too many people up there, and Gene's little brother is up there, and of course he has to run and catch him and get him before the balcony falls. It feels very out of place with the rest of the picture, which, despite its kind of lighthearted tone, is still feeling like it's set in a fairly grounded reality. And I think those elements, those things that they feel like they need to have that finale, I feel like those detract from that, honestly. But other than that, this is a great film, and especially one for an old school film nut like me. You know, this is the perfect thing. And again, at the center of it all is John Goodman as Lawrence Woolley. Always ready with a pompous speech, always ready, with, this whole thing about, the magic of the theater. He's a snake oil salesman. But there's wisdom in his dialogue, especially when he's talking about, people who go to scary movies and close their eyes aren't getting the whole picture. Kind of a guy who does close his eyes during scary parts. You got to keep your eyes open during the scary parts. You can't look away. They're there, and you got to deal with them. And I think that was true then, and it's very true now. You can't look away during the scary parts. You got to deal with it as best you can. And yeah, I think this movie deserves a bigger audience. That's why it's kind of the pilot for this sub-series during these hard times. So if you're trapped inside and you want to watch a movie that's just a little bit more life-affirming than Outbreak, then I'd say if you can track this one down, definitely give it a shot. It's worth your time. It's good, calm, clean comedy, and it's something I feel is sorely lacking in movies today. So there we go. That's our pilot episode for Drive Home Reviews Forgotten Gems. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll come back and join me as we kind of get through all this together and look at some more Forgotten Gems. If you have any you'd like to suggest, all the comments right below, please feel free. Always want to hear what you might want to hear talked about. So that's it for this edition. And as always, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.